Hey everyone, we're back with another conversation. Today I'm very happy to be joined by obviously one of my dear colleagues in Cirrolytix, Claire Tayco. Ano ba? Claire, previously the head of research and development, now chief data scientist. Of course, what's in a name, you know? So anyway, sige,
Mm-hmm.
ikaw muna Claire, welcome to Conversations, no? And maybe for the people, although you're pretty famous, maybe for those who don't know
Am
you,
I?
uh maybe introduce yourself. Okay, what's your background? And um I think one of the things we agreed to talk about today also is not just the data stuff, no, but also being a mom, no. So maybe, start with that, like background muna, and then what are you up to
Mhm.
these days?
Okay, so hi everyone, and thank you for this opportunity, to be in these conversations. So I'm Claire Tayco. I'm currently the chief data scientist at Cirrolytix Research Services. I'm one of the founding members of the company. I've been with Cirrolytix for almost 7 years now, I think,
Tagal
and
na pala.
yeah, it's been it's been a long time. So um I've built about this will reveal my age, but I've been I've built about 2 decades already of experience in computational statistics, data science, machine learning. Um, and my journey in this space has taken me from the risk and finance um, institutions, both local and international, such as BPI, BPO, and ENZ, and all the way to playing a pivotal role in some of the social impact projects in Cirrolytics. No, I think you would have heard a lot about Project EDIS. So I'm part of the team that won the NASA Space Apps Challenge in 2019. So there. So currently, I'm I'm actually uh, leveraging AI and analytics in the social impact space, since we pivoted in 2019. So that's something that I'm really passionate about. And while I'm embarking in that journey, when we started pivoting to the social impact spaces, that was about the time that I also became a mom. So um, right now I'm journeying through the ups and downs, the joys, and also the challenges of motherhood, which a role aside from my current role now is something that I cherish uh, a lot and has a profound influence on my professional work. And I must say, I'm also a proud alumna of the University of the Philippines School of Statistics. So yeah, so that's who I am.
Okay. Maybe just for, I think, the benefit of people who might be starting out in their journey, could you talk a little bit about, you mentioned risk management, which is one thing we have in common.
Mm.
What was it like starting out as a risk, I don't know what you call it nowadays, risk modeler? And how did that eventually get you into ito, no, what you're doing now, no? I guess what we call it data science today, no? But we were just talking offline that that's not what it used to be called, no? So
Yeah.
maybe retrace your steps. Ano ba, BDO, BPI? Was it a deliberate
Mm-mm.
decision to get into risk modeling, or was that just incidental?
Okay, so maybe let's step back a bit. No? So I guess my passion for quant or math started back when I was still in grade school. So I always knew I love math. I always knew I wanted to do something more quantitative. So I initially planned to to take ECE in college. No, of course, series of unfortunate events. I didn't land in ECE. I got to first pharmacy. I passed pharmacy in UP Manila, and then I transferred to UP
Pharmacy.
Diliman. Yeah, I mean, the last choice of campus, and then the last choice of course, just to get into. And then I wanted to transfer to UP Diliman. So it was a fortunate accident that at that time, statistics had the least documentary requirements. So I submitted there because at that time, people thought that if you are taking statistics, you're gonna do census. So I also had that
Census. Yeah, I know that.
impression.
I know that.
Yeah, back in the days. So, but I decided to take it anyway, and boy, did I enjoy it. No, so, and I didn't realize that taking statistics would really shape my career in the future. My aunt, she used to work for Bangko Sentral of the ng
BSP. Wow.
Pilipinas,
Mhm.
BSP. So, and I think in a way, I consider her one of my first mentors, at least in the risk space. So I've always admired her, and I looked up to her because I saw, oh, well, firstly, I was really motivated by the fact that she gets to travel abroad to train, to learn new things about risk. And I've always admired her discipline. So I thought, okay, I think the banking space will be an exciting field to be in. And then I didn't initially start in the risk space. So I first started in Citibank. So as a project credit officer, um, which had a slightly higher pay at that time, and it was the first company that called me. So they just grabbed the opportunity, and since it's Citibank, it was very famous at that time. And then I got a call from PPI, um, lower salary, but it's for an actuarial assistant role, but it's really uh, a risk analyst role. So since it's more aligned with what I really wanted to do, so I dropped everything, Citibank, regardless of the regardless of the popularity and credibility. So I just went to PI to be able to practice what I trained for in college. And I don't know, I've just been very fortunate because in BPI I found my first mentor. So I don't know if some of you in the audience would still know Marisa Franco. So she's one of my first mentors. I've just been blessed to have been under her wing the very first few years of my life, and very first few years, no, of my professional life. And then um just before I got permanent, just before I got permanent in the role, I got assigned, or she assigned me to a project with MasterCard. So I got to work with like a foreigner consultant. I used to whine a lot about how he's giving me a hard time. His approach is more of like, okay, knowledge transfer. I'll teach you this, you do everything. I used to whine a lot about that, but I realized that helped me in the future, in my role in risk. So yeah, and I guess what helped me throughout my journey, in not only in risk, but I guess all throughout my professional life, is that I've always had mentors along the way. Of course, at the start, um, we would always have like more technical specialist leaders for mentors. And then eventually when I got into the the BPO space, so when I got to ANZ, it's still a financial institution, but it's the, the BPO side of it. I got to learn other set of skills. So that's when I got to be more of a specialist leader, and I got to acquire some of the other 21st century skills that I would need in life. So yeah. But I guess, well, to sum it up, in retrospect, what I think helped is really my passion for knowledge. So I've always prioritized knowledge in upskilling as early as when I graduated. So so yeah, that helped me in a lot in my career.
I don't know if you'll
Yeah.
agree, no. Kasi although we have parang we had similar paths, pero
Mm-hmm.
obviously you come from a more mathematical path. Although I did do accounting, which is kind of mathematical,
Yeah.
it's a very different, slightly different. It's more business oriented. But one thing we have in common is risk management. And I don't know if you'll agree. Uh, al- Although we've done other things, but there's something about the risk discipline that makes it stand out, or people who have gone through a risk discipline, because we've met data people, stat people who were never risk people, like they're more like marketing people or something else. But there was always something for me about people who went through a risk management path at least once in their life. They tend to be, I don't know, I think a risk and a data profile work very well together, like hand in hand. Even if you're not doing risk analysis,
Mm-hmm.
in a way, you still bring
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
risk discipline with you. Do you agree with that, or can you explain that if you do? If it's something that you can relate to.
Okay. I agree with that to a certain extent. What I appreciate about specializing in risk is really being able to develop that discipline, because aside from you know um the rigor and looking at the data, being able to explain um the models, etc., we really have to understand the bigger context. We have to look at the regulations. We always risk is one of the first ones who have to explain to the regulators why certain results, especially with respect to capital and provisions, would be a certain way. And I think those are things that marketing people perhaps would not have to experience on a regular basis. No, so I guess that's what I appreciated about that exposure, that having that rigor and that discipline. And I think being in a risk function, I think it comes thinking about things more ethically comes naturally because you are being part of the risk function. You're looking after the bank and how it will perform with respect to, I mean, its reputation, um, whether it will survive, uh, a black swan event, etc. So, yeah, but um, what I do like though about being exposed now, no, in Cirrolytix, being exposed to is the marketing functions and all other types of domains is the freedom to apply any methodology or um, any data, explore any data to solve a problem. No? So I guess that's a good combination, being able to have that discipline and at the same time um, have the ability to explore possibilities and be creative is a good combination. So,
Yeah, we make. I don't know if it's a proper term na nga, no, but we and maybe we can explain it in a bit, no. Parang we do a lot of data blending, like ADs
yeah.
was an example of that, no. Parang okay, we get remote sensing, mix it up with Google, mix it up with satellites and because for some reason, and this is probably more of our banking background parang taking
Mm-mm.
over, no? Kasi in banking, although it is a bank, there's many types of data in a bank, no? Deposits, loans, credit cards, digital banking, as opposed to, of course, this is traditionally a view, no? Let's say in a telco, it's just one type of data, which is the telco
Mm-hmm.
data, the OSS, the BSS, no? And we also encountered this in the humanitarian sector or the science sectors. Like if you meet someone who does geospatial, they just do geospatial, or they just do remote sensing. Or if you meet like digital marketers, they just do digital marketing. So we really found a good niche, if I remember, trying to blend the two. Okay, let's look at air quality data and then see what COVID data has to do with it, or take mobility
Right.
data, diba? Um, since you actually did most of that work, can you talk a bit about that, the idea of blending data and what your thought process normally is, just for people to kind of get some inspiration. Kaya.
Okay, so I really like one of the frameworks that we use. So the four box framework. So what's the problem, and then um, what's the data you should use, the analysis, and then the measurement, and that and the cycle goes on. So I think it's very important because when just to step back a bit, when I was younger, being a young statistician or quantitative risk practitioner, it's always exciting to focus on algorithms, methodologies, etc. Without really focusing first on the problem. So I think it's important to first focus on the problem at hand. What are we trying to solve? And then that should help guide the data sets to look for. That's really my thought process. Okay, what's the problem? So what available data can be used? No, even internally, when I was in banking, what internal data can I use to answer a particular problem, whether for a modeling project or just a simple ad hoc task? So what's available that to use? And then when you have a good grasp of the problem, then you are able to better create features or analyze the data. You know how to query. You know how to query the data better, because you understand the problem. And then um, this is something that I experienced in this in Cirrolytix. There's more open data now, or at least I have access to able to use in my projects more open data, because it's a bit restrictive when you're part of a bank, because you have to use certain types of data, or at least back in the days. So um, there are a lot of data sets available now. So really the limit is just your imagination. So um, research, of course, I'm being a data person, I'm really a researcher by nature. So I like looking at, okay, um, what resources can I use? No? Data sets, libraries, codes, etc. Can I use, no? To query the data sets in such a way that I can get to the answer. So yeah, that is really my approach. Really focusing first on the problem, knowing why the problem has to be solved, and then research for resources, data included, that you can use to answer the questions. So
I think
yeah,
what you do or what we do is feels more like an art actually sometimes than
it
a
is.
science. Yeah. And I mean data jobs even per se, no? Like what you just discussed, parang the problem solving mindset. I don't think every type of IT job has that flavor. Like maybe
Mhm.
I would say even higher end software engineers come close to it, but not quite, because the nature of software engineering tends to be quite this is just my opinion, no? Parang mechanical
Mm-mm.
and deterministic. Like, okay, does the app work or not? No? Does this button
Mhm.
work or not? Or at best it's user experience, the flow, no, of an app.
Mm-mm.
But data takes it one more notch. Does the data make sense? Does it capture the
Mhm.
problem? And
Yeah.
even if it does, you may not even have a solution, diba? You don't know. Okay, we do a
Mhm.
prediction here, or you do a visualization there. So I think, and again, I'm quite biased, perhaps, no, because
Mhm.
I'm really more of a data person than a software person. But it requires really an intimate. Eventually, it will require an intimate perspective of the underlying whatever operation or business, or in our case, doing social impact. Underlying motivation is actually a social issue. like when we were doing
Mhm.
human rights, for example. I don't think you can be completely clinical about the data when you're dealing with human rights. You know, you really have to look at what's the story here, who's getting abused, or what's the message. Social behavior
Mhm.
change is another topic we can touch on later. So I
Yeah.
think that makes data roles very distinct. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying every data person becomes like that also. You know, in fact, in another conversation I had, it seems like we have a glut of data people now, the junior ones, no. But
Mhm.
for them to break into kind of the mainstream, become a more seasoned data analyst, a data scientist, it takes more than just Python and SQL, diba? And all these
Mhm.
mechanical skills. No, you're just like every other software developer. If that's all you know, it requires this higher order, parang thinking. No, o
At
sige.
saka,
Do you agree with that?
in my experience din eh, in my experience as a data scientist or a data practitioner, I don't think even if there are methodology documents available, processes available, I don't think I've ever experienced doing one thing, even if they're similar to the past projects, the same way. I always get to tackle it because there are always new data available or a new regulation that requires you to like update your methodology or something. I don't think, or at least from my experience, I don't think I've ever experienced doing something repeatedly, like exactly the same thing, both in terms of data and in terms of methodology. And then I guess,
Did you ever go through the algorithm phase where your mission is to learn as many algorithms as you can, because
I
I have to
think, ano,
confess I went through a short period of that, no? Parang every other regression that you can figure out, but at the end of the day you're never going to use them anyway, no? Parang did you ever go through
um,
that?
I had maybe I had well an obsession of being able to prove that I've done algorithms, but I don't think I've ever been obsessed with any particular algorithm. Like I have to use neural networks or random forest for a certain thing, and I don't think I've ever had that. I take a more like a more pragmatic, practical approach to things. What is useful for solving certain problems. And then I've also realized that it's not always about the algorithm. If there is one thing that I really appreciated about that experience with that Mastercard Mastercard consultant I worked with, the first project I've been involved in, was that he taught me about the what he calls a kitchen sink, approach. Now let's look at all the data and let's transform it in ways, many different ways that you can imagine. They actually make sense. So that's, I don't know if that is something that um I guess the new data analysts or data scientists have learned, whether formally in school or are learning in their existing projects. But a lot, I guess I would say no. If not 70%, 50% of the time, it's really the data. No? Either you enrich the data, you clean up your data, augment your data. It's really the data, no? At the end of the day, before jumping into like the more sophisticated algorithms, because maybe making the or exploring more complex fancy algorithms will just have very small gain in terms of the target like outcome. No,
Yeah,
so why
I've never
bother?
been a fan of, in fact, the term more fancy algorithm, more advanced, I think is a
Mhm.
misnomer.
Mhm.
Um like for example, for the longest time, and this is before the chat GPT era, no.
Mhm.
Uh if what you're doing with a neural network is just another regression or another classification, I wasn't interested. Maybe now, it's a question of tama ka, it's a question of the data. Like you want to do classify a classification of images. That's a little tough to do with a plain and simple regression. So
Mhm.
it's the nature of the data that dictated the algorithm. It's not the algorithm per se. And of
Mhm.
course, the generative stuff, that's I think completely different. So
Yeah.
then yeah, it makes sense to get into, auto encoders and all this stuff, which is a very different use case. Pero for example, let's look at the usual, like a regression versus a support vector machine.
Machine.
If you're just squeezing out an extra 2%, parang accuracy or something, tapos you lose the interpretability pa, di ba? Unless I'm
Mhm.
wrong, I don't know. It never
Yeah.
really excited me to that extent.
And I mean,
But
imagine having to explain that to management.
yun na nga,
Right.
it never works.
Yeah. And there's this recent catch up I've had with a former colleague wherein they've done a very fancy model. Oh, it's been 2 years and they haven't even presented the model yet. So okay, all that effort, no, and it becomes like a frustration. Also, I don't know, for back in the days when your output is not being used and you've done all of these effort, it can be very frustrating.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah. Okay, sige, wait. Let's go back to the first topic, no. So,
Mhm.
journey as a data person. Um, so yeah, our careers predate data science. What was your first reaction when the term data science came out? No?
I didn't feel excited nor agitated by it
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know, if you are already doing it, I don't think you give that much of a pulse.
Yeah.
And um I'm really I'm not really after labels. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe that was relevant back in the days in corporate because it dictates levels, etc. Your pay grade perhaps. But even then, um I'm not bothered by it. I know there was a point before when, okay, we were deciding, shall we call you data scientist or head of research, whatnot. So when you call me whatever, I'll do what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, just do
And
whatever.
that's what yeah, I mean, and the good thing about being in a startup is you're not um, bothered by
You don't
these
care about
things.
salary grades because there are no salary grades in a
There
startup.
are no salary there aside from there are no salary grades. You're not bothered by titles. It's all about, you know, uh, meaningful work, meaning. So I don't
Which
know
is a
if
far cry
it's
from banking, no? I remember in my days in banking, the size of your table depends on your grade. So if you're like
really
where I came from, no, parang
you have a cubicle
so you have
with
parang a slab. You start with a slab if you're staff, no, and then
yeah,
if you're suddenly a supervisor, you get a
you'll
wider
have
slab.
a
You get a wider slab, okay. And then when you're now a manager, you get an
you'll have
L.
a wall.
You now have an L-shaped desk with a wall. Okay,
At least
L-shaped wall. Pero you don't have the upper cabinet until you become assistant
I
vice
don't
president. And then when you become vice president, you actually get sort of a pseudo room. But you don't get a
um,
real room until you become a senior vice president. Sabi ko, grabe. Talagang what a way to enforce hierarchy, no? Kaya,
yeah, but that was the world back then.
yeah. But
So
ito yung masaya. Ito yung masaya. I kid you not. So, I remember I moved offices and I was a supervisor, assistant manager. But then something wonky about the table construction, parang bitten, no? So the last table in the floor was a little longer than the normal AM table. And that was my table. Ay nako, I kid you not. People were giving me flack for how come your table's bigger than mine? I said, I don't care. I have two garbage
I
cans.
just
You
need a
have one
space.
garbage can. I just need stuff. Place for my stuff. Petty, no? Kapetty. Anyway, sorry, back to you.
And then okay, back to
Startups, no one cares about salary and, no one cares about titles.
yeah,
Sige, so data science, fine, fine. Now everything's called data science. How do you now naman react to AI now coming in, no? AI is the new data science or is it?
yeah. Well, AI has been around for quite a while, but I think since ChatGPT came out came up with the bang last year, that everything is just moving at a fast pace. So well, let's just put it this way: a doer,
Mhm.
being a doer, and being a data practitioner for quite some time. I consider all of these things are just as just tools. Whether that's data science, we call it data science, machine learning, call it AI. For me, of course, there are differences. No, there are of course formal differences, but for me, as as a practitioner, I all consider them as tools that can help me solve problems. And I guess I don't know. And I've been very vocal about this even in our planning sessions, etc., etc. I think more than ever, I'm able to learn at a much faster pace compared to back in the days when I did not have like AI readily available for me, or I wouldn't have to train an AI to do things for me. No?
Mhm.
So I'm able to learn at a faster pace and able to learn more things, concepts, and of course practical things for my work. And I am now able to ideate solutions more efficiently for the causes that I'm passionate about.
Mhm. Mhm.
So aside from the fact that it can also help in your personal life, of course, it can
Yeah.
be your assistant, your co-pilot, or your advisor in a way, especially if you're working from home,
So
and
as
if you
in,
just need.
so was it a net benefit to have all of this chat GPT stuff around? Because although there are many other people talking about the risks, the fears, but as a data person, as a coder, it sounds like it was a net benefit to you.
It is a benefit definitely for me, and I think I am able to better identify problems, or able to better troubleshoot things because of AI.
Mm-hmm.
If ever, no, as ito naman is from a perspective of a mother na, kasi I think um what we have a benefit of being exposed to the actual nitty gritty of building these things is developing that algorithmic thinking, and critical thinking, when building these things. And um, it's almost second nature to us to think about the ethical implications of these products or these solutions. Whereas in the generation of like now, my daughter, it's just there. it's a it's
It's omnipresent.
it, yeah, it's omnipresent. It's like they don't see it as AI. It's just part of their normal lives. And I
Mhm.
guess one of the things that of course, I'm concerned about is how can I impart to her part of that experience or that wisdom,
Mm.
to my daughter, because not everything about AI is also good. Because if it can be used for good, definitely it will be used for bad, if not evil. No? Um, so, and we can only, I guess, or as a parent or as a mother, I can only expose her so much to as much, I guess, as much of my experience
Mhm.
and my
Mhm.
knowledge and my wisdom as possible, um, so that she will be, I guess, more conscientious, more mindful in terms of like using these things, or I guess it will be part of her day to day life. So
Was it
that's
always
why.
was the
uh,
ethics always a big deal for you? Because um I don't know, for some reason it's I've met there more times than I can count. I've met more data people who seem to feel uncomfortable about the whole concept of the ethics of it. In other words, they'd rather just stick to their task. Okay, prepare a model, prepare a report
Mm-mm.
without, or it felt very new for them. Because I remember before I was in a meetup. I don't remember
Mm-mm.
which meetup, and I asked the panel. This was a panel of people who were talking about data science this, data science that, and he said, "What if you're preparing, let's say, a scorecard, no, for banking, and one variable that was very predictive of default happens to be a sensitive variable, like
Mm-mm.
is it a pregnant mother or not? And for some reason, that predicts default. Pregnant women don't pay their bills for some reason. Um,
Mm-mm.
or I think the most extreme version was I was still in Teradata, no, and somebody did a scorecard with blood type in it,
Wow,
and
really?
blood type had a mild
What?
predictive power, no. But the fact that
Mhm.
you had blood type there was even, just a question mark. So
Preposterous.
how would how would that affect you, no? And the panel was like dumbfounded. They didn't know how to react because in their mind, okay, if it's a predictive variable, put it there because the goal is to optimize the model now. But in your case, was it always intuitive for you to look at the ethics of it?
Okay. I guess when I was a younger analyst or data scientist, my focus really is more, okay, does this data point make sense to the business? So does it align with domain knowledge? So that's it. That has been my guide um, at the start when I was still earlier in my journey. And then what I like before, about, I guess, the credit scoring, the modeling practice is you're familiar with, there will be policy deviation, so they're automatically
The overrides, no, high side, low side modeling.
they're automatically rejected, no?
Mm.
If ever there will be some low side over, and they're not even scored. The policy deviations, they're not even scored. No,
Mm.
they're manually handled. Most of the time, they get rejected. But one of the, I guess, the things that I appreciated during my practice in banking was the concept of swap set. So there are certain segments in the policy deviations that they are likely to be, I guess, default, or at least based on historical experience, they are likely to be defaults. But the bank will, okay, or at least the risk function will, okay, let's test, okay, scoring these segments.
See how
Let's
they do
test
now.
whether yeah, and let's see if they will get some good customers, no, from these segments. I know the motivation is really to increase the approval rate, increase the customer base, but nonetheless,
Mm.
give, those segments could be part of your underbank segment. So in a way that addresses part of the problem, no, of servicing that
That
under
segment.
serviced that
Mm.
segment. And then um so yeah, but I guess, well, my I guess the my Catholic
Upbringing.
faith,
Hmm.
yeah, Catholic upbringing is, well, it um being a devout Catholic, I I I really believe in the inherent dignity of a person. So I think it comes naturally for me to think about this. That's why, and looking back, I think that's why I'm passionate about social impact, and why is it very important for me that my work contributes to that, and
Mm.
why
Mm.
I aspire that my child will also be able to experience that.
Hmm.
So yeah, I guess I never really thought about it as, okay, it's something uncomfortable or it's something. There are some guideposts along the way. Started with, okay, things have to make sense for the business or for the stakeholders, and then after that, okay, given my background or my belief, okay, you deserve a chance, or you need to be treated a certain way, whether that's a model or you as a person. And,
Mm, mm.
yeah, um, you just apply what you are as a person in your work. So
You know,
that's always
I'll be honest.
mm,
I might have asked you about this in the early days when we were
mm,
starting to work together. I
uh,
found it very curious to have someone like you who's very, uh, I guess, very serious about faith, no? And then at the same
really.
time,
Mm,
you know what I mean? It seems at that time it seemed very very strange, no? Na you have someone
oh,
who's very very data driven, very statistical, very scientific. At the same time, also has a very strong faith life. No, I have a part two to this.
mm,
But
mm,
was it ever
um,
strange for you, or did you ever find that a conflict, if ever? Because you kind of
yeah.
the typical assumption is the more scientific you become, the less faith or the less dogmatic. O baka those are not the same thing pala. The less faith based
Mm.
someone becomes. No, any thoughts on that?
I well, yeah, I agree that I mean, there are scientists who are atheists, if not agnostic. But I think um yun nga, parang ano ba? Sabi nga nila, no, the training of a child begins 20 years, no, with the education of the mother. And I think
Ah,
yung
interesting.
yeah, I think if you watch, some plug. Now, if you watch, please watch the Fulton Venerable Fulton Training of Children. I think he mentioned there. I mean, Napoleon was asked, when does the training of a child starts? Yun yung response niya, and it really resonated with. And I think a lot of yung who I am today is because of my mother. She has very
Hmm.
uh strong faith, and I think even the metaphysical. I mean, if you really think about it, you can parang get to those answers or to that with logic then. It's just that people are too focused on the physical or the natural, you know, evidences. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's the yun I don't find it strange.
Mhm.
And in fact, and in fact, my mentors, no, I've been blessed to have had mentors who are also very devout
Very
Catholic.
faith-based, very
Like
devout.
Marisa Franco she goes to mass every day,
Is she?
every day,
Okay.
and
Okay.
and she's a very devout Catholic.
Mhm.
And I've had my aunt is also a very spiritual, very religious. My mom, so I guess it wasn't really strange for me, but I get where some of these I guess scientists are coming from.
Mhm.
But yeah, and I just feel like it's good to. I mean, it's good to think about there's something beyond this life other than just in,
Yeah. Interesting.
rotting
No, no,
after.
I have
So
a
anyway,
sabi ko nga, I have a part two to that perspective, no. And
yeah, yeah,
I have to admit, I didn't realize we were gonna get to this topic, but I have to admit it's
yeah.
something I'm still struggling with. That
Mhm.
now that this is for me, parang now that I'm
Mm-mm,
seeing
mm-mm,
parang generative AI, no, which
mm-mm,
is giving everyone a glimpse of what AGI might look like. Of course, it's
mm.
certainly not AGI yet, but it's pretty good, no, compared to what we've had in the past.
Yeah,
For me, the struggle is really if or when rather when one day we finally birth like natural intelligence, AGI for that matter,
mm-mm,
then we've closed the loop because we've proven that intelligence can create intelligence.
mm.
And now we must entertain the possibility talaga that we were created by another intelligence. It just it's just
Yeah.
natural. No? Parang parang ano I heard this the first time when I forgot his name. see George Hotz ata was being interviewed by Lex Friedman.
Yeah.
And for George Hotz, he's like this superstar coder. He said it the only likelihood is an intelligent designer
Mm.
created us, no? And then Lex Friedman said, but then who created the designer? And he said, I don't care. That's the problem of the designer to figure out who
Yeah.
created it, no, or him. And then if you think about it, he had this really interesting analogy. Like, for example, think of a computer game, no? Like whatever, Super Mario. In the Super Mario world, assuming you're there, no, you're one of the
Mhm.
constructs there. You're Mario and Princess Toadstool. What do you think the origin of the world is in their world? Malamang it has nothing to do with the real story where some people programmed it into the Nintendo Entertainment System and people are playing it. No? You
Mhm.
know what I mean? So it means that within this created world, their creation story may be completely divorced from, and which might be even be scientifically quote unquote provable within their universe, may have nothing to do with the actual reason. Like for example, tayo, we keep saying, okay, it's a Big Bang because all evidence seems to point to, a single point of creation. No?
Yeah.
Because that's what we can see or theorize we given our environment. May have nothing to do with the real story. Kasi if this whole thing is
Yeah.
a creation, then yung totoong reason can never be, you can't divine the real workings of the outside universe from within the universe. I mean, that just makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm struggling with it because it's not necessarily because I regret believing or I regret not believing, but I struggle with the whole idea that if we were created, then we have a purpose. And whatever
Mhm.
that purpose is, it
Mhm.
may be something beyond our understanding. So the best we can do is really just interpret it from what we can see.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know if I'm ready for that. Talaga, no. For other
Mhm.
people, it seems like a very simple Pascal's wager nga, diba? Just assume that.
Oo.
But for me kasi it's really fundamental because
Mm.
then now I wonder, and I'm sorry to take it to this level, and I can jump to the other topic after this, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's okay.
now I need to resolve many things about myself, about what I do, about what I'm doing, about the outcomes of what I'm doing. Parang now I need that closure. I need that to make sense now for me at least. No? I don't know if other people have that need. And
Mm.
another thing pala that comes to mind, just briefly. Remember the whole issue on heliocentricity and geocentricity.
Yeah. Back in
I
the
love
day.
I love that
Long, long time ago.
example.
Oo.
Oh, I love it because it shows how math can't solve it. Kasi
Mm.
when we were geocentric, 'di ba, Mercury has a floral pattern around the Earth, no?
Mm.
Calculus proved it. kasi kasi if you observe nga Mercury, differential equations will prove it's floral. Hindi lang they just can't explain why it has to be floral. It just is.
Yeah,
And then you change the
exactly.
assumptions. Oh, sige, forget Earth. It's really the sun. And then the data just rearranged itself, and then now we can prove with calculus again. Now, we moved around the sun. So for me, that was really the biggest, parang Anscombe's quartet sa stat, di ba? Parang
Oo.
you can't trust the damn math anymore. Kasi the math will align depending on the
Ang
fundamental
assumption, oo.
theory, the assumptions, no? So it goes back to the assumptions. The data didn't help you there because the data is the data. The math didn't
Oo.
help you there. It's really yung bottom line mo, the actions. Now, what do you want to take as a given? Then everything else
Mm.
proves the given na naman. So that was a fundamental, wow, grabe, mind
So
blown.
there has kaya I don't think I'm not a believer of relativism. There
Oo
has
nga
to
eh.
be like a fundamental truth.
There has to be a
So
fixed point, no?
there
Somewhere,
has
no?
to be a fixed point, a fixed starting point. No, I mean
Yeah.
that governs everything. Imagine how much things are in order, exact order. Now, if you change a tiny little bit, na everything will be in chaos. No, but then just going back, bago ko makalimutan you mentioned something about AI and we got to this point in the discussion.
Mm.
I remember in one of my subjects in masters, no, a professor said, no, I think he was discussing machine learning or computer vision or something like that. When you imagine, no, I mean, a computer will do this, for a computer to be able to like detect a face or something, it will have to measure the distance of the nose from the eye, etc. So distances of the different features from each other. But for a human being, for your brain, you're able to recognize a person for who he is without doing all the maths. Doing all the maths. So I mean, imagine that grand design. So relating that to AGI, I'm not even I'm not even afraid of that. No? Because I think, well, at least this may be my fate speaking, but I don't think there'll be a grander design that than us. No, I
Than
mean,
that, no.
we haven't even figured out how to do computer vision back in the days, and we are able to do it ourselves. So, what greater intelligence? Well, and I guess, we were created out of nothing. To be able to create like a model, you need how many GPUs, how many servers in the desert or wherever, whatever part of the world. Uh, Imagine the resources that you would have to
Yeah,
put
yeah. I
up.
mean, I'm less bothered by that, no.
Yeah,
I'm more, for me it's like a deeper issue na,
yeah, for
like,
sure.
I'm already in my mid 40s. You kind of burned half of my life assuming one thing. And now I have to retool and relearn. But on the other hand,
Mm-mm.
I actually feel a little relieved. The first time this thing occurred to me was when I gave that talk in Letran, a couple of weeks back.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to look for the citation, but according to one of the speakers there, the Pope actually endorses AI, or at least says na AI is good. Okay, that's a relief. I said, at least we won't
Mm-hmm.
have to deal with the Catholic Church in, doing AI, no, whereas everyone else has problems with other things, no. So okay, that's good. But then yun na nga, parang Thomas Aquinas eh. So, oo nga, if we are able to create, then it implies we were created. It's really such a very straightforward thing, and it may not even be proven ever, but the
Mm-mm.
intuition seems to be
Yeah.
there. No? Yeah, the intuition seems to be there. Anyway, sige.
Sige.
To go back to, and maybe
Lighter
we need to
stuff.
do another episode on this, no? This philosophy thing. Sige.
Yeah, yeah,
Talk a little bit about being a mom, no? So,
yeah. Mm-mm.
because that sometimes parang people kind of ignore that part.
Yeah.
And we have all of, I don't know, I don't really mean to stitch it all together like this, but there's always these parang movements to make STEM more accessible to women who code, for the women, all these movements, no. So in your case, was gender ever an impediment to, dual question, was gender ever an impediment to your career as a data
Mm-hmm.
professional? And then now that you're now achieving, arguably one of the epitomes of being a woman, being a mom, no, how did that change anything, or did that address, or did that change anything about you being a professional, or how did that affect you being a professional in data?
Okay, so for the first one, and it's good that you asked this question. Oh, personally, I have not experienced challenges in my career due to my gender. I've I've seen throughout my career leadership by women. My first mentor is a woman. No? Um, Many of my teammates in risk, in quantitative risk in particular, were women. So I don't think, not that I don't acknowledge that that problem exists elsewhere, but at least personally for me, and I think in some way in the Philippines, I don't think that's one of the bigger issues. It was never um a hurdle, for me to to learn, to upskill, skill to progress in the corporate world and be able to do the things that I'm passionate about. So, so yeah, and you know, I've always believed in, I guess, gender roles. No, I mean, as a woman, there are definitely things that I would be better at compared to a man, and vice versa. And there will always be choices that women will do for to prioritize something. So same as with men. So um I guess an acceptance of that is more liberating rather than trying to fight that system. But definitely um I think it's still important that these issues are highlighted, because there may be some people or some women um who may not be aware of the possibilities because you've always been confined within your environment. These are the only things that you know. No, so, or for those who wanted to explore other careers, they didn't know that analytics could be another space for them to explore. No, so um, having efforts or initiatives like this, I think, um, is still beneficial. No? Um, as a whole. Now, on your second question naman about being a mom, no? So I guess this just for the benefit of the audience, no? So mm, working from home, breastfeeding mom, no nanny, new mom. I just have one at the moment. But all I can say is that it's a struggle. No, it was a struggle being a single, a single person. It was a struggle being married and doing this career. It's an even greater challenge being a mom with all of those things, with my circumstance, being in tech, no, and or being in data science line AI space, because it's quite a demanding career. No, as you've already mentioned, it's not like a process driven um, role. No? Oftentimes we have to do something new or explore something new to be able to solve certain problems. So it really is a challenge. And I think now that after COVID, we're working from home. I think one of the, I guess, things that I'm struggling with is the visibility of the work. Because, as you know, like mothers would have what you call like a mental load. From moms are cooking thinking about what to cook for dinner, lunch, breakfast, and at the same time thinking about, okay, where do I enroll my child to ensure that she'll have a good future, and at the same time oh, I have to, okay, run topic modeling on this big data. I have to do this in Python, learn this, etc., etc. So it's really challenging. And when my child was younger, I have to do that while breastfeeding her. Sometimes I have to attend a meeting while breastfeeding her, or do the coding while breastfeeding her, or have to work very late at night just to get something done. So um, I I can't say that I've already figured it out, but definitely I just have to set my priorities. So definitely um, faith in family comes first. And anyway, this is all my efforts are really for them, right? So I just really have to prioritize, manage my time whenever I can. And what I'm quite happy about with, this age of generative AI is that I'm able to do things more efficiently at work, so that I can be more productive, or I can juggle more effectively my domestic and my professional life. And at the same time, I'm also learning at a much quicker pace. So, I mean, it's not a end all be all solution, but definitely it's helped me a lot. Hello? So
Okay.
you're, I think you're on mute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm happy to hear it from someone like you who's clearly done very well as a career, and both as a corporate and freelance and social impact professional. To hear someone say that gender wasn't an impediment. I'm not saying that, we want to discredit all of these parang initiatives to level the playing field. But
Yeah.
for some reason, this is just me, no. But for some reason, some of it feels a bit too overdone. Only because I have to also. There's this term called privilege, nga, sa critical theory, diba? Maybe my privilege is I never got to see that impediment myself, nor the environment I was always in. No? Parang, and maybe it's the nature of the data. Like for example, we were both in ANZ. We were majority women pa nga at that time. Parang,
Exactly.
oh, is it can we argue that data is kind of a very forgiving, gender forgiving field? Or is that too unfair then to say that? No? Kasi software development seems to be very male driven. But that doesn't
Mhm.
mean women can't study software development. But for some
Yeah.
reason, when you get to data, which is practically another type of software development because it's got coding,
Mhm.
it doesn't seem to exclude women for some reason. No? How do you agree with that, or how do you feel about it?
Um, I don't think I have like enough data points to say that it's really universally universally that's the case. But based on what I've seen here, even before the time it was called data science, I don't think you know it's a challenge. Uh, Women are given the same opportunity as men in the analytics data in the data field. Um, it's not a challenge. I don't think it's a challenge for women to learn data or analytics for that matter. um, for programming, I'm not so sure because you can do analytics with GUI type of um, like tools or even spreadsheets, which are I guess more uh, can be learned more easily compared to the usual programming languages. But yeah, based on what I've seen in the data space, I think there are about the same number of women, if not more, practicing in the data space. What? Okay, this just crossed my mind. So if there's one thing that I would like to hear more, would like to see more, are women who are mothers and are actually speaking about these experiences while juggling their responsibilities, their role as a woman in tech or a woman in AI or a woman in data science. Because just earlier today, I was searching for okay, who could be like people from Lincoln could be my inspiration for this. But a lot of the people, the mompreneurs that I see, are actually the virtual assistants, the digital marketers who are using AI um, for their businesses. But I haven't seen a lot of mompreneurs, in the AI space actually doing the AI or actually doing data science. Maybe some of the more popular again women figures in analytics are previously, single or just recently married and then became mothers. But I don't hear them talking about their experiences as moms while in the tech space or in this space. So yeah, I
I
mean,
have met
if there
women
are, I mean,
developers,
I'd
right?
like to find them. I'd like to find them. So,
Remember si ano, I forgot her name, Charo yata is one, and a number, but certainly not as many as data, women in data. That's another group of women in data. But
yeah, women in
um
data. There are a lot of women in data. But I don't think they talk about like the stuff that we're talking about. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
could
yeah.
use, especially if you're working from home. It would be good to have a community like that, like role models like that. So yeah,
Exactly, exactly. Okay. Well, I just realized we're at the hour.
yeah,
And we barely scratched the surface as always
yeah.
in these
I'm sure
talks.
there will be future episodes.
Sige, we gotta hold a lot for the next episode, but maybe for let's go back to being a data professional, a data scientist, a mother. Um, if you had the opportunity to talk to yourself, back in the day, and of course this is a circular logic because you actually did pretty well considering things. What would you tell yourself, or what would you tell people who are starting out the same way you were now, uh in terms of lessons, or advice, assuming they want to become similar to yourself, be both, in other words, maintain, they don't need to lose, the essence of being a woman or the essence of being a mother, plus also basically kick ass in data.
Kick ass and data.
Any advice that you'd like to leave them, coming from your own experience.
Okay, so I guess it's very important for you to truly know your values. That's the first one. And then I know for new graduates, there is always pressure to just jump into the next job and get the role with the biggest or the highest salary. Um, but I think, I mean, I've I've actually done this myself. But if you focus on what you love to do and focus on what you're good at, what you trained for, then all those other benefits will come after. Maybe it doesn't seem obvious at the start, but I suggest you prioritize what's important to you and prioritize knowledge. Because once you're very good at a certain thing, be it data, coding, whatever it is, then you become more marketable. you if when you become a master yourself, you're able to pay it forward and mentor other people. And then thirdly, it's good to have like a good support system, whether at home or um, at the workplace. So I don't think I would have reached this far if not for the mentors that I've had along the way, both technical and of course otherwise, so non-technical mentors. They've helped me a lot in my career to become the woman that I am today. And I guess take charge of your career. Um, I think we've been, I guess, raised to seek for validation. Um, just go for it. You know, um, do what you love to do. Learn as much as you can. Um, the only limitation is to yourself is yourself. If you don't give yourself that opportunity, then no one else will. So yeah, I guess that's my advice. And use all the resources at your disposal, including AI and otherwise.
Oo
So
nga.
yeah,
Which is another topic we need to cover later, no? Yeah, okay.
yeah.
So I guess with that, I guess that's a good place to end this first chat, which will probably be the first of many. So thanks a lot, Claire, and yeah, hope to have you on a
Thank you too.
conversation. All right.